Thank you for joining us again and welcome back to another exciting and informative video on our YouTube channel. If you are joining us for the first time, we want to thank you for watching. In this episode, we shall be looking at how events in the continent of Africa, specifically in the country of Niger, is unfolding. And in this video, we shall be looking if is France to be blamed for the instability in West Africa. Niger has become the latest country in West Africa where the army has seized control, following Burkina Faso, Guinea, and Mali, including Chad, all former French colonies. Since 1990, a striking 78% of the 28 coups in sub-Saharan Africa have occurred in Francophone states, leading some commentators to ask whether France or the legacy of French colonialism is to be blamed for the instability in these West African countries. Emmanuel Macron has arguably been the most progressive French president when it comes to Africa, officially acknowledging colonial France's mistreatment of Algerians and seeking an ever-elusive reconciliation. He has apologized in Rwanda for his country's role in failing to prevent the 1994 genocide by the Hutu militias against ethnic Tutsi. He has created a commission to investigate colonial massacre in Cameroon as well. Macron has reached out to youngest civilian society and startups, sometimes over the heads of African governments. He has agreed to scrap the CFA franc, the 8 nations West African currency tied to France, to be replaced by the ECO in 2027 based on information. He is the first French leader to have returned cultural treasures to Africa as well, sending a collection of statues to Benin in what is likely to set a precedent. Despite this effort, yet, though they make France's colonialist blood boil, such gestures are too little, too late for many Africans based on historical information. Many of the coup plotters would certainly like several people to think so, that France is responsible for the instability in West Africa. According to Colonel Abdoulaye Maïga, who was named Prime Minister by the military junta in Mali as of September of 2022, launched a scattering attack on France, criticizing neo-colonialist and also condescending, paternalistic and also vengeful policies by France. Mr. Maïga alleged that France has disowned universal moral values and also stabbed Mali in the back. Based on his own analysis, anti-French vitriol has also flourished in Burkina Faso, where the military government ended a long-standing accord that allowed French troops to operate in the country as of February, giving France 1 month to remove its forces, which has happened at the moment. In Niger, which neighbors both countries, allegation that President Mohamed Bazoum was a puppet for French interests were used to legitimate his removal from power, and 5 military deals which France have since been revoked by the junta led by General Abdourahmane Tiani. Partly as a result, the coup was followed by popular protests and also attacks on the French embassy. The historical records provide some support for those grievances. French colonial rule established political systems designed to extract valuable resources while using repressive strategies to retain control. So did the British colonial rule. But what was distinctive about French rule in Africa was that the extent to which it continued to engage with those countries in the continent of Africa. Its critics will say that meddle is a little word. Its political affairs and economic issues in the continent of Africa, as France continued to meddle into former territories after independence. 7 of the 9 Francophone states in West Africa still use the CFA franc, which is pledged to the euro and guaranteed by France as their currency, a legacy of French economic political activities and towards its former colonies. France also forged defense agreement that saw it regularly intervene militarily on behalf of unpopular pro-French leaders to keep them in power. In many cases, this strengthened the hands of corrupt and abusive figures such as the former president of Chad, President Idriss Deby, and also former Burkina Faso President Blaise Compaoré, creating additional challenges for the struggle for democracy. Although France did not intervene militarily in restating some of those recent activities and deposed heads of state, all were seen as being pro-French. Worst of all, still, the relationship between French political leaders and also their allies in Africa was often corrupt, creating a powerful and wealthy elite at the expense of African citizens. François-Xavier Véchal, a prominent French economist, coined the term France-Afrique to refer to neo-colonial relationship hidden by the secret of criminality in the upper echelons of French political and also economic sphere. The instability Francophone states are currently experiencing cannot be solely laid at the doorstep of France. It has hardly been the only former colonial power to prop up authoritarian leadership abroad. During the dark days of the Cold War, the United Kingdom and the United States have propped up a number of dictators in return for their loyalty, from Daniel Arap Moi in Kenya to Mobutu Sese Seko in what was then Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The strong relationship between coups and former colonies power was also much less prevalent in previous eras. 4 of those countries that have been in the highest number of coups attempts since 1952 are Nigeria with 8 coups, Ghana with 10 coups, Sierra Leone with 10 coups, and Sudan with 17 coups, which all experienced British rule at the time. While the recent trends of coups in Francophone states may reflect the legacy of France-Afrique coming home to roots, it also has been underpinned by the unprecedented level of insecurity in parts of West Africa and the Sahel region, with armed groups violating extremist and also criminal networks, undermining public confidence in civilian governments. According to UN reports, France will probably be the best advised to channel its effort instead of under the more politically acceptable banner of European Union, which is building a comprehensive partnership with the African Union, the key principle of which were outlined at the summit in Brussels as of February of 2022, based on our own research. As bad luck will have it, however, that bonding relationship has been overshadowed by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which has also monopolizes European Union's political and also financial attention. If you look at that strategy, Africa can clearly see how the bloc, France included, has also plunged billions of euros and military financial assistance into Ukraine, while support for African peace and security efforts has been for more constrained. They also see how Ukraine has gained EU candidate status and been center stage at every summit, while Africa has to struggle to secure even a bilateral help in procuring a COVID-19 vaccines based on research. More importantly as well, the war in Ukraine has added to food insecurity and also energy prices squeezing on the continent. For many Africans, Europe seems more concerned with blaming Russia than helping. Macron Africa's reset is in many ways a halfway house. He admitted as much in his big speech. We are held accountable for the past without having been totally convinced about the shape of our common future. The decision to rebrand the African bases as joint training ventures was itself reportedly a compromise between advisors who argued against yielding another inch to France's adversaries as well, and others who want to shutter much outposts and also refocuses the armed forces on preparing for possible high-intensity warfare in Europe and also Indo-Pacific. If you look at what happened, while 61% of voters think France should stay in Africa because of the economic and security interests as well, also to help prevent mass migration to Europe. An orthodox poll for La Figaro based on our own research shows that a similar majority in pessimistic about France's African ties and doubtful of Macron's ability to build a new partnership. This may not be the last Franco-African reset, as France continues to inch its way to regards to building a new relationship, as France has been kicked out from countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, and most recently we are looking at what is happening in Niger. If you consider France's presence in the region, France hasn't invested anything with regards to economic partnership, infrastructural development, and also some very important economic aspect in the region. If you consider what China has done in Africa, it has clearly proven that Africa is not where businesses go and die, that African countries offer value, and if you work with the continent with regards to partnership and also of equals, you will reap out the benefits. Despite considerable funding and troops, the French-led international response to Islamist insurgents in Sahel region has failed to enable West African governments to regain control of their territories. This was particularly significant to the fate of civilians leaders in Burkina Faso and Mali, because their inability to protect their own country and citizens created the impression that French support was more of a liability than a blessing. In return, growing popular anger and frustration embodied military leaderships to believe that a coup will be celebrated by the citizens. Yet, for all the mistakes France has made in dealing with these former colonies in Africa over the years, each of those coups over the last 3 years has also been driven by a specific set of domestic factors that demonstrated the legitimacy of African political and military leaders. In Mali, the background to the coup included an influx of extremist forces following the collapse of Libya state in 2011, which had France's footprint and handprint on it. Allegations that the president has manipulated local elections, mass anti-government protests, orchestrated opposition parties in the capital. The trigger for the coup in Niger appears to have been President Bazoum's plans to reform the military high command and revamped also General Niamey from his position, and France's intervention in the country's political activities might also be an issue based on analyst report. This is a strong indication that coup was not really intended to strengthen Nigerian sovereignty. The mixed motive of recent coups are well demonstrated by the speed with which many of the new military governments have sought to replace one problematic relations with an external ally with another. At the recent Russian-African summit in St. Petersburg, leaders from Burkina Faso and Mali declared their support for President Vladimir Putin and also invasion of Ukraine. As in the past, the beneficiaries of the global alliance are likely to be the political elites rather than the ordinary citizens. Reducing the French influence is therefore unlikely to be a strong foothold to boom. France has amassed wealth in those African countries. If you consider the historical information and France's interaction with West African countries, France has invested little as compared to what the Chinese have done in those particular countries recently. If you consider France's presence, its interference, and manipulation in West Africa, you will consider that France's interest comes first before the citizens of West Africa, and this is not going to be a business as usual. That is the reason why several of those countries in West Africa are standing up to France and making their presence felt, and some have expelled French ambassadors from Mali to Guinea and also to Burkina Faso, and we currently see what's happened in Mali as well. And also, if you consider what's going on at the moment and the challenges in Niger, we are all monitoring what's happening in that particular region. But the big question here is, what role does France has in Niger? If analysts will say that at this particular moment Africa has gone through lots of challenges considering the COVID-19, Africa in particular is looking to grow its economy, to transform its particular atmosphere, looking at the African continental free trade coming into action. We want to thank you for watching. Let us know what you think with regards to France's presence in West Africa and those other countries that are currently hanging on to the French colonial aspect and this particular agreement. And we will all be looking at what happens in Niger and how those other countries in Central Africa are monitoring activities in this particular region. We want to thank you for watching. We encourage you to keep the conversation going. We are looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.